The crucible of Anthros had stood for 12,000 years, a monument to violence and supremacy that orbited the dead world of Carthax. 3 miles across, constructed from neutronium alloy and shielded against every known weapon, it was where the galaxy's greatest warriors came to prove their dominance. And for the last 800 years, it had belonged to one being, Vornash the Unbroken, the eternal champion. The creature who had never lost a single fight in 10,427 consecutive matches. I watched him on the hollow displays as our transport ship approached the Crucible, studying the footage that every human military strategist had analyzed 1,000 times. Vornash stood 12 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton the color of dried blood, 4 arms ending in blade-like appendages that could slice through ship hull plating. His species, the Creshter, were engineered warriors, literally born and bred for combat over millennia of genetic refinement. He was beautiful in the way a perfect weapon is beautiful, efficient, lethal, unstoppable, until today. My name is Sarah Chen, former lieutenant in the Terran Defense Force, current last hope of a species that had been humiliated in the Crucible for 30 years straight. Because humans, in our stubborn insistence on joining the galactic community, had demanded the right to compete in the arena that defined military prowess across known space, we'd sent our best. Champions from every martial tradition Earth had ever produced, special forces operators with decades of combat experience, augmented super soldiers with reflexes enhanced beyond natural human limits. Vornash had killed them all, not defeated, killed. That was the price of the Crucible. You fought to the death, and the winner claimed glory while the loser's species bore the shame. 30 human warriors had entered the arena over 3 decades. 30 times Earth had watched our representatives die on galactic broadcast, torn apart by a creature we couldn't touch. And every time the galaxy laughed. Humanity, they said, was weak, soft, a species of fragile things that had no business pretending to be warriors. But we'd finally learned something important. We were asking the wrong question. The question wasn't, how do we beat Vornash? The question was, why does everyone keep fighting him the same way? The Crucible's reception hall was filled with representatives from a dozen species, all of them watching the approaching human delegation with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. We'd announced this match 6 months ago, given the mandatory notice period, and speculation had been rampant. Who would humanity sacrifice this time? Ambassador Trell of the Vaxian Coalition approached us as we disembarked. She was a tall, crystalline being whose body refracted light in complex patterns. "Representative Chen," she said in perfect galactic standard. "On behalf of the Crucible Authority, I welcome you, though I confess surprised that humanity continues to pursue this tradition." "We're persistent," I said neutrally. "It's one of our defining traits. Persistent or foolish." She gestured toward the viewing chambers where the match would be broadcast across the galaxy. "Vornash has killed 30 of your people. What makes you believe the 31st will be different? Maybe we finally learned something from the first 30. Trell's crystalline features shifted in what I'd learned to recognize as skepticism. "The rules are absolute, as you know. Single combat, no weapons except those you bring with your own body or can claim from the arena floor. Fight until death or submission." "Vornash has never accepted submission. We're aware. Then I can only wish you, well, not fortune, as that seems unlikely, Perhaps a quick end? She turned away, her tone making it clear she considered this another futile gesture. I didn't blame her. From the outside, this looked like suicide, one more human throwing themselves into the meat grinder. But she didn't know what I knew, didn't understand what we'd finally figured out after 30 deaths and countless hours of analysis. Vornash wasn't unbeatable. He was just unbeaten. There's a difference. The Crucible's preparation chambers were sparse, just a room with basic facilities and a one-way window overlooking the arena floor. I stood there watching Vornash complete his pre-match ritual, a series of movements that looked like dance and martial arts combined. Every motion was precise, economical, perfect. My comm unit chimed. "Chen, this is Houston. Final status check." "Ready," I replied. "Is the data stream active?" "Confirmed. We'll be receiving everything your implants capture. The analysis team is standing by." A pause. "Sarah, you don't have to do this. We can call it off, find another way." "There is no other way," I interrupted. "We've tried the conventional approach 30 times. It doesn't work. Vornash is too fast, too strong, too experienced. We can't beat him at his own game. So you're going to try something crazy instead." "I'm going to try something human." I checked my vitals one last time, heart rate elevated but steady, adrenaline within acceptable ranges, neural implants functioning perfectly. "We've been sending warriors to fight a warrior. That was our first mistake." "And what are you sending instead?" I smiled at my reflection in the window. "A scientist who learned to fight. Big difference." The door opened. A Crucible official, some species I didn't recognize, gestured for me to follow. "It is time, human. May your death be honorable." "I'll settle for effective," I muttered and walked toward the arena. The arena floor was 200 meters across, surrounded by stadium seating that held 100,000 spectators. Millions more watched across the galaxy via hollow broadcast. The floor itself was textured metal, designed to provide traction while being essentially indestructible. Weapon racks lined the perimeter: swords, spears, energy weapons, projectile guns, exotic implements from a dozen warrior cultures. Previous human champions had rushed for these weapons immediately, trying to arm themselves before Vornash closed the distance. They'd all died with weapons in their hands. I walked to the center of the arena empty-handed and waited. Vornash entered from the opposite side to the roar of the crowd. Up close, he was even more terrifying than the footage suggested, muscle and chitin and bladed death, moving with the confidence of a creature that had never known defeat. He stopped 10 meters away, his 4 eyes focusing on me with predatory intensity. "Another human," his voice rumbled through translation implants. "I had hoped your species would learn, that you would accept your limitations and cease this futile waste of life." "We're slow learners," I replied. "But when we finally figure something out, we tend to get it right. You carry no weapons. Is this surrender? This is science." I rolled my shoulders, feeling the slight weight of the subcutaneous implants that lined my skeleton. "See, everyone who's fought you has made the same mistake. They studied your technique, your speed, your combat record. They tried to match your strengths, and failed because they were inferior warriors. No, they failed because they fought your fight. Let me ask you something, Vornash. In 800 years and 10,427 matches, how many of your opponents were scientists?" His mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion. "Scientists do not enter the Crucible." "Exactly." I started circling slowly, and he mirrored me, maintaining distance. Warriors study combat, scientists study systems, and you, Vornash the Unbroken, you're a system, a very complex, very efficient system, but still a system. Your words are meaningless. The match begins in 30 seconds. Arm yourself or die defenseless. I'm already armed, you just can't see it yet. The klaxon sounded. The match began. Vornash moved with blinding speed, closing the distance between us in less than a second. His blade arms swept toward my throat in a pattern I recognized from the footage, the same opening move he'd used in 70% of his matches. I'd studied that move for 6 months, analyzed it frame by frame, built predictive models, run simulations 1,000 times. I ducked under the strike with millimeters to spare, pivoted on my back foot, and slammed my palm into his thorax joint. The shaped charge implanted in my hand activated. It wasn't an explosive that would violate Crucible rules about external weapons. It was a precisely calibrated kinetic pulse generator, powered by my own bioelectric field that delivered 50,000 newtons of force to a specific point. Vornash's exoskeleton cracked, not broke, not shattered. Just cracked, a hairline fracture in armor that had been considered impenetrable. He stumbled back, his 4 eyes wide with something I'd never seen in footage of his fights: surprise. The Krechter exoskeleton, I said, breathing hard, is composed of layered chitin reinforced with metallic calcium compounds, incredibly strong against cutting and piercing attacks. But it has a resonant frequency. Everything does. And if you apply force at exactly the right point, at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right amount of pressure. I activated the next implant, a targeting system tied directly to my visual cortex. Vornash's body highlighted in my vision, weak points marked in red, structural stress points in yellow, optimal strike zones in green. You create cascading micro-fractures that compromise structural integrity. Vornash roared and came at me again, but this time with fury instead of confidence. His attacks were faster, more aggressive, and for the first 30 seconds I was purely defensive, dodging, blocking, using every bit of combat training I'd received while the implants mapped his movement patterns. Then I started hitting back. Palm strike to his lower left shoulder joint, kinetic pulse micro-fracture. Elbow to his thorax, same location as before, the crack widened. Knee to his leg joint, chitin splintered. I wasn't stronger than Vornash, wasn't faster, wasn't a better fighter, but I knew exactly where to hit, exactly how hard, and exactly what would happen when I did. Impossible, Vornash snarled. You are human, fragile, weak. Adaptable, I interrupted, slamming my fist into his cracked thorax again. We're not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most naturally armored, but we're really, really good at problem solving. Another strike, another fracture. The cracks in his exoskeleton were spreading, and I could see blue-green fluid, his equivalent of blood, seeping from the joints. You fought the same way for 800 years, I continued, pressing my advantage. Overwhelming force, superior speed, impenetrable defense. It works against warriors who think like warriors, but I'm not a warrior. I feinted left, he bought it, and I drove my palm into his damaged thorax with everything I had. The exoskeleton gave way. Vornash screamed, a sound like tearing metal, and one of his blade arms hung useless, the internal structure compromised. The crowd had gone silent. This wasn't supposed to happen. The unbroken didn't break. But I'd learned something in 30 deaths worth of data. No biological system is perfect. Everything has weaknesses. You just have to know where to look. I studied every fight you've ever had, I told him, circling as he favored his damaged side. 10,427 matches. I analyzed your movement patterns, your strike preferences, your defensive responses. I built a complete biomechanical model of your combat style. I activated another implant, this one flooding my system with a precisely measured dose of combat stimulants, pushing my reaction time and strength to their absolute limits. And then I spent 6 months training to exploit every single weakness in that system. Vornash charged again, but he was slower now, protecting his damaged side. I mapped his trajectory, calculated his optimal strike zone, and moved. Dodge, strike, pivot, strike, roll, strike. Every hit targeted the weak points in his exoskeleton. Every impact precisely calculated to cause maximum structural damage with minimum effort. It was like watching a building collapse in controlled demolition. One precise strike at a time, I was dismantling the most feared warrior in the galaxy. "Submit," I said as another of his arms went limp. "You've lost. Accept it." "Never." Blue-green blood ran from his joints, and his movements were jerky now, his legendary grace replaced by desperation. "I am Vornash. I am unbroken. I do not lose. I do not." I swept his legs. The damaged one buckled completely, and he went down. Before he could rise, I had my hand pressed to his throat, right over the weak point in his exoskeletal collar that protected his major arteries. "You're broken now," I said quietly so only he could hear. "And you're going to submit, because I'm not here to kill you, I'm here to prove a point." "What point?" he gasped. "That humanity doesn't win by being stronger or faster or tougher. We win by being smarter, by studying, by adapting, by refusing to play by rules that don't favor us." I pressed harder, feeling the fractured chitin crack further. "And we win by offering mercy when we could offer death. Submit, Vornash. Live to fight another day." For a long moment, he just stared at me with those 4 alien eyes. Then, impossibly, I saw understanding dawn. "I submit," he said clearly. "The match is yours, Sarah Chen of Earth." The arena exploded in chaos. The aftermath was complicated. The Crucible Authority didn't know how to handle it. Vornash had never lost, never submitted. The rules covered this scenario technically, but no one had ever expected it to actually happen. Ambassador Trell found me in the medical bay where they were checking me over. I'd cracked 2 ribs and torn several ligaments, but I'd live. "That was," she paused, searching for words, "unprecedented. The implants you used, their technological augmentation. Some are arguing they violate the spirit of the rules. They're powered by my own bioelectric field, no external power source. No weapons that aren't part of my body. I checked the rules very carefully." I winced as a medical drone sealed a cut on my arm. Besides, Vornash's entire species is genetically engineered for combat. If that's allowed, my implants should be fine. The authority is still deliberating, but regardless of their decision, she shifted colors in a way I'd learned meant respect. You accomplished something remarkable today, not just defeating Vornash, but showing the galaxy that humanity approaches challenges differently. We're problem solvers, I said. It's what we do. Everyone else sent their best warriors. We sent a scientist who studied the problem until she found a solution. Will you fight again? Defend your championship? I laughed, then immediately regretted it as my ribs protested. Are you kidding? I barely survived this fight and I had every possible advantage of preparation and surprise. No, I'm retiring undefeated. Let someone else worry about the crucible. Trell made an amused sound. Wise, though I suspect finding challengers may be difficult. You've rather spoiled the arena's reputation for invincibility. I returned to Earth a hero, though I'd never wanted that title. The media called it the triumph of human ingenuity. Scientists praised the application of biomechanical analysis to combat. The military immediately started developing training programs based on my approach. But the real victory was subtler and far more important. Galactic perception of humanity changed. We weren't the weak species anymore, the fragile things that died easily in the arena. We were the problem solvers, the adapters, the species that looked at impossible challenges and found unexpected solutions. Trade agreements became more favorable. Political negotiations took our positions more seriously. The respect we'd been trying to earn through conventional military might, we'd achieved through unconventional thinking. 6 months after my fight, I received a visitor at my research lab in Geneva. I'd returned to my real passion, xenobiology and biomechanics, happy to leave the warrior's life behind. The visitor was Vornash. He traveled to Earth personally, requesting an audience. When I met him in the secure facility we'd arranged, I barely recognized him. His exoskeleton had healed, but he moved differently, less arrogantly, more carefully. "Sarah Chen," he said formally, "I come seeking knowledge, not combat." "What kind of knowledge?" "You defeated me through understanding. Through study of systems and weaknesses, through preparation rather than pure martial prowess." His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "For 800 years, I believed victory came from strength and skill alone. You showed me I was wrong. So what do you want?" "To learn. Your people have universities, centers of learning where knowledge is shared freely. I wish to understand this human approach to problem solving, to see if an old warrior can learn to think like a scientist." I stared at him, this legendary champion who'd killed 30 of my people, now standing in my lab asking to become a student. "You understand," I said carefully, "that many humans won't forgive what you did. The people you killed, they had families, friends, people who loved them. I understand, and I cannot change the past, but perhaps I can honor their deaths by learning from them, by becoming something more than a weapon." He met my eyes. "You offered me mercy when you could have offered death. Perhaps you can offer me one more thing, the chance to evolve beyond what I was made to be." I thought about it, thought about the symbolism of it, the complicated ethics, the potential for healing and growth. Then I thought about what makes humanity human, our capacity for forgiveness, for second chances, for believing that people can change. "All right," I said. "I'll sponsor your application to the xenobiology program at the University of Geneva. But you'll be held to the same standards as every other student. No special treatment." I would expect nothing less. 5 years later, Dr. Vornash published his doctoral thesis on the biomechanics of interspecies combat, a groundbreaking work that revolutionized galactic understanding of martial arts and physical confrontation. His research, combined with human methodology, created entirely new approaches to conflict resolution. The crucible still existed, but its nature had changed. Champions now competed in problem-solving challenges as often as combat trials. The definition of strength had expanded to include intellectual prowess, strategic thinking, and creative adaptation. And humanity's reputation had transformed completely. We weren't the species that won through overwhelming power. We were the species that changed the rules of the game. I watched Vornash's thesis defense via hollow conference, feeling an odd sense of pride. The unbroken champion had become a scholar. The perfect warrior had evolved into something more complex and more valuable. After the defense, he contacted me privately. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For showing me that being defeated was the greatest victory of my life, that there was more to existence than 800 years of violence." His mandibles clicked in what I'd learned was his version of a smile. "You didn't just beat me in the arena, Sarah. You saved me from becoming nothing more than my victories." "You saved yourself," I replied. "I just showed you the door. You walked through it." After the call ended, I returned to my current research, a collaborative project with scientists from 15 species, studying the biomechanical adaptations that allowed different forms of life to thrive in extreme environments. My comm unit showed a news alert. Crucible announces new championship category, collaborative problem solving, first intergalactic team competition scheduled. I smiled. The arena that had defined power through individual combat for 12,000 years was evolving. Humanity hadn't just fought back against the Crucible's champion, we'd fought back against the whole concept of what strength meant. And we'd won in the most human way possible, by changing the conversation entirely. The untouchable champion had fallen, but more importantly, he'd learned to rise as something new. And the galaxy, watching humanity's approach to the impossible, was learning the same lesson. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy. It's teaching them a better way to fight.